everyone, Admin G here. Admin S won't be with us today. Today's episode is a bonus episode, and I have a special guest with me. His name is Todd, and he has his own podcast called Thoughts of the Modern Viking. Todd, would you like to tell us a bit more about your podcast?
Hello, everyone. As Admin G said, I am Todd, otherwise known as the host of the Thoughts of the Modern Viking podcast. I basically talk about anything and everything that comes to mind. And it's been a lot of motivational type stuff and also just thoughts about the world and a bunch of other things like that. But if you are so inclined, please check me out afterwards. We'll also remind you at the very end. What is today's topic, Admin G?
Today's topic is talking about breaks in the workplace.
Oh yeah, the thing that we're all supposed to be getting. You know, because that's how that works.
Yes.
All right.
So today's bonus episode is the very first episode of many different bonus episodes that we're going to have every single Wednesday. They'll probably be recorded on a Wednesday and then released later on in the Wednesday evening. But that way, Actively Autistic touches more on different topics rather than just mostly focusing on mental illnesses and physical and mental disabilities. So have you ever worked in a place that has hardly ever given you a break that you've been entitled to for lunch?
So, generally, no. Mainly because the two workplaces that I worked at, either didn't give me enough hours to entitle me to a lunch, or basically just told me straight up, hey, we don't really take scheduled breaks because we don't know if we can. 7-Eleven was like that, and I work for the company, but I do not like say about the company. I don't have like their personal interest in mind anymore. It's been like 3 or 4 years since I worked with them. But our break situation was mainly take one when you fucking can. Speaking of which, do you allow swearing?
Yes, explicit is checked.
Cool. Editing later. Yeah, so we just take one when we fucking could, because it was one of those things where we just were like, oh, hella busy. And you could be hella busy for like 4 hours or 8 or 5 hours, and you just didn't get a break. But one of my bosses was just like, oh, hey, so the break situation, just take one when you can and hope. Especially since, that was just how it was for us. I basically was able to take a break whenever I could, which was good, but also not exactly best for business practices, I would assume. What about you? Have you?
Oh, yeah. My first job was at Skate City.
Oh, fun.
And it was actually my first semester in college when I started at Skate City. And I have also had a few other places that I've worked at where I would work so hard for so many hours and not get a break at all. And one of the topics that we're going to be talking about today in this specific order is that it's actually against the law.
Yeah.
And I personally was terrified. I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, that's understandable. Just for context, Skate City, if you're not from the Colorado area in the United States, Skate City is basically a skating rink. Not an ice skating rink, just like rollerblades and roller skates. They normally are very kid-centric. Mm-hmm. So like you have a lot of birthday parties and things like that, a small arcade maybe, and just like very interesting little party games while you're on the rink. Adults can go. I've been recently, and it's just interesting. But for context, that's just that. Anyway, yeah, it's very much against the law. There's a lot of laws that a lot of individuals at businesses are not really inclined to tell you, especially if they're shady in that regard. Yeah, there's a lot of different things. But continue on with your story. Just didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you for that clarification. I so very badly want to go skating again.
They're fun.
It's amazing. Also, fun fact, they allow wheelchairs out on the skating rink. So
That's
if you have someone in a wheelchair, you can take them with you. But so the thing is that businesses can get into so much trouble if you don't get a break, even if it's a small one. If you work for 8 hours, you're entitled to a 30-minute to an hour break. Honestly, kind of depends on where you work. Mm-hmm. And if you work for less than 8 hours, you get a 15-minute break.
Which is good.
But even here where I work right now, you know, I still get an hour worth of a break, even if I work for 3-4 hours. I still get that hour of a break because that's just kind of how it's recorded. So a lot of jobs will not tell you when to take a break.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's an interesting part on their end, because normally with a lot of different jobs out there, they have certain things that will be like, oh, well, you are entitled to a break, but you don't have to take one necessarily, which is not a great thing on their part. They're just like, oh, well, you didn't take a break today? Okay, that's because it's on you, which it shouldn't be considered.
Yep.
All right, so we always look for places that just like, oh, well, the problem with this system is that the business can theoretically, not all businesses do that, do this in general, but they decide that you have to be the one who initiates the break, which kind of sucks because you can kind of get lost in your own workplace and lost in your own work thoughts because you're just like, oh, I need to serve this customer, I need to clean this table, I need to clean the shelf, I need to do this, and sometimes you just forget. And that's one of the shadier things that you know, some businesses do. Unfortunately, that's what some businesses do. Unlike some other great places that I've personally worked at, or maybe even Admin G over here has worked. But some businesses are just like, oh, well, you didn't initiate a break, and we don't tell you because you're the individual who should be like that. Even though businesses would literally tell you, hey, you are legally obligated to like take a freaking lunch or take a break because you need to get off your feet for a minute and just do that, go to the break room, whatever is necessary. But businesses don't do that, mainly because some businesses will look at this situation and be like, well, they're still working, they're still producing us money, and if they can handle it, they can do it. Mm-hmm. And you know, a lot of businesses are just like, well, I mean, if they're not willing to initiate the break, then they don't need one, which is, you know, a thought process that they have. It's not exactly the best, but it is kind of a little bit. It can be a little bit shady because they won't tell you, or they're just like, hey, just, you know, somebody comes to relieve you. That's when they should be doing it, but that sometimes it doesn't happen, and you have to do a lot in order to like try to initiate the conversation with your supervisor, with your whatever, saying, hey, I need a break because, you know, I haven't taken one yet and we need to get that done. So we can talk about that later, but, you know, that's kind of what I'm thinking of with breaks at work. Like, especially the work environment that is not the best, because you have to kind of initiate it, and that can be freaking terrifying because you don't want to be fired for something that you brought up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which again is unruly firing because you wanted a break, which the company can also get in trouble for. Keep that in mind.
Yes, and also managers can be really, really intimidating depending on who your manager is. Yep. And their entire persona. Mm-hmm. So for someone like me, I'm more introverted and I prefer to kind of not really create any problems within the workplace. And so what I would do is I would just go, okay, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. Then I'd just take a quick bathroom break, but then I'd feel guilty and just go right back to work, even if I was only in the bathroom for like a minute. Mm-hmm. So like, it definitely really depends. And I think asking during your interview, like, okay, well, what do breaks look like? Might also be kind of helpful because bosses can also, depending on who you have, it just can kind of slip their mind and they might not even think to mention it.
Right, and that's something that, you know, a lot of individuals, like, you know, we can go into an entire episode based on just interviews, just workplace environment, just people connectioning, because you look at it and you're saying, oh, well, I don't really have any questions during the interview process. Mm-hmm. Well, that does two things for you in the environment of an interview. the interview type of thing, you can look at it and just say, well, okay, how does the pay structure work? How does if you have questions, ask them during the interview. That's always what I will tell people. But like sometimes your boss, if you like your potential new boss during the interview, if you don't have any questions for the individual, it's either that you weren't thinking of any, which is not a good thing because like the bosses will be looking into that, or they'll just say, okay, cool, nothing new here. We're just going to continue on doing that type of shit. And that's just something where it's like, oh, well, the boss can just let you go because you're not interesting. But if you ask, like, good questions, for instance, like, how do breaks work here? Like, since I'm going to be working part-time, how does a break schedule work in this environment? And that could be something that you bring up a little bit later because, like, there's other important questions that you need to, like, provide during an interview. And some of the individuals out there are probably not really well equipped to handle like, that type of situation where you have to, get out of your shell a little bit and talk to the individual and actually ask them questions. Some people are very introverted like that, and that's okay. It's just understandably you have to be able to stand up for yourself and also look for the help that you need, especially in the work environment. HR can sometimes be the best or the worst in the individuals, and it just looks like, oh, well, at least I tried. No, that's not how this should work. Businesses should be like, we're trying to grow. We're not trying to run you into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've probably worked at places where literally it's just like, I'm going to get as much out of you as possible before you quit. If you go into like a place of work where your management is like that, you probably shouldn't be working there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my thing. Because, if I was a manager, and I was a lead in my previous job, so I kind of had a managerial role in certain areas. I would always look at my players in this game that we're playing, which is called Life, and I want them to be able to work to double down on their strengths, work on their weaknesses if they want to, or forget them all entirely and just be able to do the best that they possibly can while not overdoing it and literally like ruining their mental health. You know what I mean? That's just something that's just rough. And managers sometimes don't look at that like that because they see, sometimes, especially in bad work environments, they see you as a number or a pawn in a structure where it's just like, cool, we can throw this out to the wolves and see what happens. And that's why a lot of businesses have a lot of turnover, is because sometimes it's business practice, sometimes it's managers themselves, sometimes it's just workers, and sometimes it's just people in general where it's just like, I don't know what else to do. And those individuals are just, they frustrate me because I'm just like, that's not how we as humans want to find work that A, pays them well enough in order to live, and B, also satisfies them in a way. I mean, there's a lot of jobs where you're not going to find that because you're working at like McDonald's or a lot of other things, but any job place, at least in my personal opinion, should at least try to keep their employees in mind. Unfortunately, they don't. At least some areas don't.
You hit that right on the nose.
Yeah, I know what I mean, I've been around for a little bit longer than you, but not much. But my general experience is now it is and it always has been people focused.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we all want, right? We want to be treated nicely enough, and be able to go to work and actually find some fulfillment in what you're doing. And that's what most people want. Some people just are doing it for the money, and that's good. At least you have a goal in mind of what you're trying to do this for. At least you can give a slight damn. But, a job's a job is something that I think that us as the world should just say, that's not what I'm going for. Because, we're looking for things that tell us, oh, this is what we want, right? I mean, I've been talking about this now for a little bit. I've been always saying that people should be able to go out and do what they want, be happy as long as they aren't hurting anybody, and that's all that really matters to me sometimes. But now I'm like, well, that includes the people who, especially in the work environment. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The work environment is a place that just somewhere where we need to be able to look at it and say, this is what we want. Okay, we can take that in mind, as management, we can make sure that your goals are met, our goals are met, especially if you want to keep the good people. And people will just like, well, there's not enough good people. There are good people out there. You're just A, not looking hard enough, or B, running them out of your business when you hire them. That's just worse. And breaks are one of them. Breaks are the hugest one of them because they're just like, I'm working like a dog for 8 hours a day, and I can't do this over and over and over again 5 days a week, or 6 days a week even, because there's some people who just like,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that just burns people out super fast. Like, I would be burnt out after that. I was burnt out, like, working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week at my 7-Eleven job. Even though it was supposedly an easy job, it still run me to the ground because I didn't take enough breaks and I didn't feel appreciated, which sucked. But that's what happens. That's what we do. So maybe we can switch our focus to be a little bit more human-centric and better for the employees and a bunch of other different things. But I'm not a business owner yet. I might own a business later in life, but right now I'm probably going to just be an employee who tries his best to make sure that the work environment's good.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Another thing is that like depending on the specific company that you work for, if you're in real estate, you are also put on a 24-hour call for, I think, a month.
Yeah.
Or a few weeks or something like that.
Sure.
And you don't get paid for that. The company doesn't pay you for that. And I personally feel like that isn't fair because not only are you working your original job 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, or like you said, sometimes even 6, then you're given, you're going to be on call. And what does that mean? That means someone's probably going to call you at 1 or 1:30 in the morning saying their plumbing isn't working or something like that.
Sure.
And then you have to explain to them, well, I'm sorry, but, the plumbing company doesn't open until this time, or I'm going to have to call them and wake them up at 1:30 in the morning in order for them to know about this urgent problem or not so urgent problem. And that just isn't fair because that's also kind of like I feel like that also ties into not giving your employees a break from work.
Being on call, I've never been on call before. I mean, I have for small bits in time, but not like these individuals who are like, hey, for like the 3 days that you're off, you're gonna be on call just in case if we need you, which is 99% of the chain saying we're gonna need you, just be prepared for it, and it's gonna suck. So it's like one of those things where you're just like, yes and no. Yes, it is a good thing for individuals to get more hours. If you're not getting paid for it and a few other different aspects of it, especially if you work like a 12-hour shift the previous day.
Oh, God. Yeah.
If you work like 12, 14 hours and they're like, oh, you're going to be on call. Call you at 8 in the morning. Yeah, we need you in. Fuck. You know what I mean? It's just, that's bad. And it sucks because my theory about it is either you didn't hire enough people to cover the shift that you're supposed to have, or you're hiring very unreliable people. And the reliable individual will get very tired of the 1 a.m. calls after a while, and then eventually will find different work, which really sucks because a lot of individuals, especially in the middle and lower classes, seem to just be bouncing around from point A to point B all the damn time, and you're just like, well, I'm never gonna make it anywhere because the places that I work just are never satisfying enough, and also make my life a living hell, which is absolute garbage, at least in my personal opinion. So we have to, I think that us as a society, not just the United States, but whatever country is doing this type of shit, we need to find a balance. We need to find what is going to be, everybody's availability for certain things, and if we have to put some people on call, we can't pay for them, then that's something that is a little bit different, but it still sucks. Or you have to find more people, find more people to cover that particular time frame, or find more reliable people, at least in my personal opinion.
I'm also wondering if we could hire, if companies could hire night shift people too, to take on that specific type of on-call, because then I get that the whole point of having your employees be on call is so that you don't have to spend more money. But I'm kind of like, I don't know, it would be interesting to have people for a night shift specifically for being on call.
Well, the only issue that I would have with that is night shift people normally get a lot of the shit, because a lot of the night shift is a lot of cleaning and a lot of being up from early mornings of time. So being on call specifically for those time frames could be working, but you have to A, work through a lot of different scheduling issues. Mm-hmm. B, you would have to pay them considerably, because considering the fact that they are already working 8-9 hours from like 10 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning, you have to figure out a way to A, not get... It also depends on how many people work the night shift. Mm-hmm. Because if it's a company of 12 people and 3 people work on the night shift, then it makes sense to pull one of those people away from the night shift and have them on call through from like 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock and then start their shift and go home early. That makes sense. But if it's a company where it's like 8 people and 1 person works a night shift, it's just not fair. Mm-hmm. There's going to be no possible way for that night shift individual to take on that load, because instead of having more of the load for the morning shift or the mid shift, you have put a huge bit of responsibility on top of the individual who already has to do so extra much. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm just like, maybe not, depending on your company situation and how many people you need for a night shift and how big your business is. There's so many different factors where it could work, maybe, but you have to consider the possibility of it's not feasible. Mm-hmm. Now, certain individuals will find that as an advantage and do it anyway, but those individuals can go to hell, at least in my personal opinion.
With that, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break and have a word from our sponsors.
Yay, sponsorships!
And then we will be right back with our thoughts on how you can fight it and how you should, not how you should, but how you can and should fight it.
Instead of should, yeah. We'll go ahead and go to the sponsor break.
Yeah. Hey everyone, Admin G or Gabby here from Actively Autistic. Have any of you been interested in recording your own podcast but were never sure how? I was too, until a friend told me about Anchor. If you don't know about Anchor, it's honestly the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free, it has tools that'll allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer, and it even distributes your podcast for you to different platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, that's Anchor, ANCHOR.FM to get started on your own podcast today. Hey everybody, welcome back. So now that we are back from break, we are going to tell you that you can fight it, and you probably should fight it. That's what I meant earlier, by the way.
Got you.
Don't ever be afraid to go to your boss, and if they kind of don't acknowledge you, don't be afraid to go to HR or upper management to talk about the problems that you're having at work.
Yeah, those are the first 2 steps, especially since, toxicity could happen, especially when it comes to both of those. So fighting it can be beneficial. It can make change and things, especially if you like your job. If you don't really like your job, my personal advice, don't really just fight, just quit. It's so much easier, and they technically win, but you don't have to deal with them anymore, and it's up to you to find your own personal happiness level. Again, especially in this environment, work can be just either some of the best things that you do, some of the best people, or the worst. Absolutely just the worst. And a lot of it is, especially when, a job that you hate, or you don't like that job a lot, or anything like that, that's when things are like, okay, fighting it can help. It can. or it can cause you unnecessary stress that makes you just hate your life more. In reality, we ain't about that. So we should probably, in reality, go ahead and just quit that job, find something different, find what you're passionate about, and do it. That's just my personal opinion on that type of thing. Especially if it's a job you hate. Because if it's a job you hate, that's telling you something right there. If you hate that job, you hate the people around it, you don't have to stay. There is so much more opportunity out there because you think that you are obligated to stay to this company because you got hired by them. They would fire you immediately if, worst comes to worst and they don't find you valuable anymore. They would fire you immediately because they can find somebody else. That's just how it is. Unless your position is very, very skilled and you have like the necessary talent for that, then maybe a little bit different story. But otherwise, you can do whatever the heck you want to do. Find what you're passionate about and get going. That's just my personal opinion on that. Fighting it seems to be something that we're like, oh, I'm just going to take this with HR. Cool. HR doesn't do anything. The problems still continue. Over and over and over and over again until you have to leave. Either by your choice or their choice. Mm-hmm. And you don't really get that choice every now and again. Because it's just like one of those things where you're just like, hi, no, we don't want you here anymore. Oh, okay. I didn't like this job anyway. But, finding that you're sad, angry, depressed, or anything about that, type of, like, if you're not okay at that job mentally, fix yourself by getting out of that situation. Because seriously, it's not worth your mental health to fight it if it's that bad and you've already exhausted those two options of trying to talk to the people who are in charge of you, or talking to the supervisor above them, or talking to HR, or whatever. If you've exhausted those and nothing seems to be changing, just quit. Mm-hmm. Your personal happiness is definitely better and more valuable than working 8 hours at this job that you hate. At least in my personal opinion.
Yes, but before you officially quit, I would just also start looking for another job before you actually walk out that door, because so depending on, your age and what kind of jobs you are already working, sure. It really depends on that whole system. So like I knew someone who would have a good job, but the environment wasn't right for them, so then they would end up quitting because their mental health was beginning to deteriorate. But then they would be out of work for 3, 4, 5 months, and they would have no luck getting another job because they were either overqualified or underqualified or, whatever other personal opinions that other companies had. So I would definitely suggest to start looking for a different job and at least try and land an interview before you officially quit.
And not even just that. You don't even have to start looking for a job if you don't want to. If you say, for instance, what I kind of do. I don't have a job per se. I'm going to probably get one here soon, but I don't need one right now because there are so many different ways to make money. If money is your issue, we can make money. You can find ways to make money. And, like, for instance, some of them is just thrift shopping. Like, for instance, I went to a Goodwill, right? Mm-hmm. And I saw this Colorado State hoodie. And I'm like, okay, cool. How much is that? I looked on eBay, and I found that some people were trying to sell it at, like, $20. And I'm like, okay, how much is it here? I paid $5. And then I sold it for $10 on Facebook. I made profit. That's something that you can do. There are so many different, like, if you feel like you cannot get a job because somebody's telling you that you're overqualified, screw those people, because they probably didn't like you, but they're just trying to tell you something that is just seems that they're the ones that are gonna like. It's like, oh, well, for this job, you're too overqualified. Fuck you.
And for some jobs, though, you are overqualified, and that's the really sucky part, too,
it does, but, like, still, those people are they're telling you things that, like, so that way they don't look bad. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I hate when people do that type of shit, especially at the job places. People are like, oh, you're just overqualified. No, you just didn't like me. There's a difference. Whatever. Cool. I don't have to deal with you ever again. I can go work somewhere else. or, make money somewhere else. Play whatever you have, whatever is necessary. Have fun. Do whatever.
Go to their competitors.
Yeah, or do that too. Do whatever. Do whatever. And if you can, especially in the higher type of job places, or like where you found what passion you're looking for, and you know what job field that you want to do, and you can't start the business just yet, go ahead and find what job you want, and then do it. Because that's just something that, we're always looking for. And it just is one of those things where it's like, look at this. Look at what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to make sure that I can, live well and be happy. If I can do those two things while working at your place, sure. But if I'm not, then it's just sad because a lot of people have to, settle for jobs they hate because it's money. Mm-hmm. And those types of shit sucks. Because that's when your mental state goes to garbage.
Yeah, and happiness is going to be another bonus podcast in probably 2 weeks from now. And so to kind of brush up on that part a little bit is and I'm going to recommend this documentary in that episode anyway. It's called Happy, and you can find it on Amazon. You can either rent it or buy it. I personally really enjoy the documentary, so I bought it. But it talks about how when people are happy, they're more productive at work.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's definitely part of the business to also kind of make your employees happy, because then you'll also end up getting more turnout, more benefit from that.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell that from the people who actually like their jobs. I mean, now again, there are going to be some aspects of the job that people don't like. For instance, customers. If you're in retail and your management shit and the customers are shit, that's just bad in general. That's just bad. But when your management is decent and good enough and good with you, and the customers are shit, they move on. You get help from your coworkers or from your management to help you get along through that, and that's at least beneficial because that you feel valued at that company. You feel like you aren't just a number, and they're actually treating you like a human being, which we should all try to do. And it's just something that we all look at and just say, this is what we want. Why are we getting this? And it's just it's just shit that people don't like. Customers, they want everything done their way, and yes, they should, because the customer is always right. Except when you're a dick, when you're an absolute asshole, and you're just doing this because you feel as if this is something that we as a society are just saying, oh, well, we can be shit to these people because they're working a job and I'm above them. Not true. No, they're still people too. You would hate if some Karen walked up to you and said, you're doing your job terribly, and also, I want this. And a bunch of other stupid shit. There's a lot of problems in this scenario. But with at least your management and at least good people around you, eventually, with the good customers that are there too, those customers are always there. I found a lot of good customers when I worked at certain places. But still, it's one of those things where you're just I now look at this and say, there's a lot of interesting people out there. There's a lot of bad people out there. Let's try and be empathetic and make sure that we can teach the bad people how to be decent and teach the decent people how to be good.
There's actually a comic that I've seen on different social media sites that I'm on. I mostly do Facebook and Instagram. Fair. But one side was a mother saying, to her child, oh, if you don't study, you're going to end up like him, and it's pointing at a garbage man.
I've seen this.
And then there's the other one on the other side where it's like, oh, study and you can help men like him. And it's also, so it definitely depends on how you look at it. But also the thing is that our society would not be able to function without those people.
Yes.
We need people who work for garbage truck companies or recycling plants and stuff like that in order to help our society function and be a better place. No one is above anyone.
Right. And there's a lot of perception out there that says, oh, well, since you work here and I work at since you work at a gas station and I work at and I'm a multi-millionaire people, I'm better than you. No, you're not. You just have more money than I do. Especially if you treat people like that. Because I would rather be friends with somebody who works at a water treatment facility and be the happiest motherfucker in the world than these assholes who decide that, actually any person who decides that they're better than somebody because of the title they hold.
Mm-hmm.
That's because you're self-conscious and you can't get over the fact that somebody is better than you. Whatever you're trying to prove is something that's rough for anybody. So I'll be empathetic towards them, but I won't. I just don't want to be friends with them unless they want. Like, I would be empathetic to them and they want to learn and they would, like, you know, get the mental health that they need, the help that they need, get whatever they need in order to, like, you know, get to a better place, and then maybe we can start talking. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, you look at this people and there's a lot of individuals who just hate. There's hatred out there, right? Mm-hmm. We always are like, oh, well, these individuals, you see these individuals on like your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Reddit, whatever community or social media you're on. That's another topic I might talk about later on my podcast, is social media in general. Because social media is not a bad place in general. It isn't. It's because without the people in it, there would be nothing on the social media. Mm-hmm. Nothing. It's the people that make it what it is. And some people are just like, well, social media is corrupting people. No. Because, again, as I said, it's a free service that you can choose to either be on or not.
And you can also choose what you see.
Or what you say.
Yeah.
Everything. You have control over your little bubble. And a lot of people out there want to go out there and ruin somebody's day.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, I'm just like, why? Why do you do this? Like, I want you to come, like, I want people to, like, be saying, oh, well, this is dumb. Why are you being like this? Like, what caused you in life to be just a general asshole to somebody else? I'm not saying that as, like, a personal thing. I'm saying that because I'm worried about society as a whole, because a lot of people are, like, dog-eat-dog world, and this is, you're less than me, and I have to make fun of you for it. No. That's not how this works. Anyway, that's just something that, like, you see about that type of stuff, and you're just like, this is why a lot of people, like, you know, hate their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Because their management thinks that they're above them because they're working the dog pile area, and then they can pile on top of that. Or the other people around them think that they're better than other people. And the customers even do that. But a lot of people do that, and it's just something that we as a society, you know, need to break. Mm-hmm. We need to break that chain, because if we don't, then it's just going to get worse. It always will. I mean, we always like, oh, this is the worst it's ever been. You don't know that. There's a lot of people out there who deal with a lot worse shit than you. Especially if you are, you know, living in this country, for instance, the United States of America. You're living in this country, and you're an individual who has some privilege. You know, that people don't call it that, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
If you have some privilege and you don't get harassed every single day, or you don't get, like, you know, this type of thing over and over again, you don't have any right to talk like that to somebody else. You know what I mean?
You also just gave me another idea for another bonus episode, which is kind of getting discriminated or marginalized in the workplace, especially kind of like as a woman, or being overqualified for our job, because I've also hit glass ceilings at my other job.
Fair enough.
And it makes me mad.
Well, like, well, think about it this way. If you, as a straight white male, I am one of the most privileged individuals in this country. I am. I cannot deny it. Because I don't go out in the world and have to fear that somebody is going to attack me because of what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
Or what I am. I don't have to fear that. And that's terrible. Because I want people to be equal. And that includes a lot of different things. You know, I want people to be able to go out in the world. Like, for instance, women, African American people, Mexican people, like racial, like if your sexuality gets attacked, if your race gets attacked, if
mm-hmm.
a lot of different things out there, like, you know, people on the autistic spectrum get attacked. There's so many people out there who get attacked because they're different, and that's one thing that that I will always try to prevent, and be friends with the individuals that are just like out there trying to figure that out. But we don't need that type of hatred in this world, but we have it, and we have to fight it somehow. And if people can hate randomly, I can love randomly. That's all I say to that.
Yep.
That's another episode that might be happening later down the line for me, and maybe for these guys as well on Actively Autistic, especially on their motivational type stuff, or maybe even their own episodes, depending on when Admin S gets back. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just finished moving, so they're getting settled.
Once everything gets back to when they can have their entire conversations and everything like that, we can figure everything out from the next couple of things. But maybe I'll have Admin G on mine. We'll see what happens and we'll go from there. Anyway, is there any more topics that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So real back to the kind of like fighting it too.
Yeah.
Well, as Todd pointed out, they can fire you, and they might fire you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they also can't fire you.
They can, but they could get into some serious trouble.
Oh yeah, they can get into some major trouble. So if you do decide to fight something like this at any point in time, make sure that you have records about how long you worked but didn't have a break. Mm-hmm. And have a recording of you asking your boss for a break. Or anything like that, because it can definitely hurt them.
Any piece of evidence like that can definitely help you in your case.
Yeah.
Just be careful.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of things that people will do just to wiggle their way out.
Mm-hmm. You can also talk to the Better Business Bureau, the BBB.
Yep.
And you can complain to them if you're not taken seriously, or if you're afraid of talking to your boss in HR with, any kind of evidence that you may or may not have. You can talk to OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, especially if you're cleaning with chemicals without proper supplied gloves or mask. Because I've worked in a kitchen a few times, and I've had to do things that were not on my job description, but as every job ends up putting, you're agreeing to do more than what's on your job description.
Yep.
So make sure you always keep that in mind. Even when you're mad, like, oh, this isn't in my job description, you still agreed to do stuff that wasn't in your job description. And so just keep in mind that that's definitely something that you should keep in mind. But, make sure that if you are working with chemicals, you're given a proper mask and you're given proper disposable gloves, because those chemicals can hurt you really bad.
And it's just like one of those things where you have to be paying attention. Read your contract. Read your contract to your job.
Mm-hmm.
If they say that in the contract that we are entitled to put you through basically whatever we want, it's not going to be that simple to look for, because it's going to be a lot of legal jargon and a bunch of other things. Look at it, read it through before you sign it. On top of that, you have to be able to just, if you're going to fight this, look at the situation and just be like, okay, is this going to hurt me? Sometimes you sit there and you're just like, okay, this is a lot of bad things that are happening all at once. Chemicals, for instance. Not being able to be provided a mask and a few other things. That's where things can get very sketch, and you have to look at that and say, that might hurt. Or even if you're doing it and it starts to hurt, stop immediately and figure out A, what's going on, B, if it hurts bad enough, then go to your medical professional and tell them, yo, I don't know what's happening and this hurts.
Make sure you, if you have your phone on you, because some places don't allow you to have your phones, but if you can write it down, or if you can take a picture, write down the chemical that you are using.
Yeah.
Because, in the kitchen, for example, when we're doing dishes, mainly soaking the really heavy dishes,
Sure.
there's this specific chemical that you soak your dishes in. And if it gets on your skin, it will burn you. And if it gets in your eyes, it's even worse.
Right.
I mean, you'll have to go to the ER immediately.
Know where you're like, especially in areas where like dangerous equipment and or dangerous chemicals are and a bunch of other things. Know where your emergency facility is. Like for instance, the eye washing station or like the shower station. Like to make sure that you can get it off of you. Know where a lot of different things are, so that way you know that you are safe to do this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But be able to react to it. Be able to look at it and say, this is a bad situation. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to back off. And if somebody tells you to get back to work and things like that, tell them, no, I'm hurt. I don't feel comfortable in this situation. I would like to go and talk to my HR for you talking like that. Like, again, it's a lot of different things of your self-awareness. Self-awareness in the workplace. Especially if people are telling you to do that type of shit. I wouldn't even stand for that. I would be like, you know what? I don't care. Like, especially if somebody, like, if I'm burnt, like, by chemical or whatever, if I'm burnt and someone tells me to go back to work, I wouldn't stand right there. That right then and there, I'm just like, no, that's not what I would do, because at that point, I don't care anymore. I will quit. I will be fine. You don't have to pay me unemployment or anything. I don't want to deal with you. And if it's severe enough, maybe lawsuits are involved and a bunch of other things like that. But if it doesn't have to, it doesn't need to, then we can fix it ourselves. Fine. But if not, then you go to whatever you need to do in order to get yourself to get yourself compensated and shit like that. But a lot of different things at this workplace, a lot of different environments will just be like, hey, okay, let's fix this. Let's go ahead and get you cleaned off. Let's go ahead and get you, to the medical professionals that you need to be seen, especially within your eyes, or especially with anything else like that. And if they didn't provide you with that type of stuff, just tell them straight up, yo, I wasn't provided with the gloves or anything like that. What gives? And they're just like, okay, well, that's our bad. If they're like this, then good. If not, then you have to consider, is this work environment good enough for you? So that's just how it is.
Another thing is that if you're working with chemicals, your job, if it has chemicals, is required by OSHA to have a list of every single chemical and what that chemical is and the dangers of that chemical, because that is a requirement. So if your job doesn't have a list of that, they can also get in trouble for that as well. There's also, what HR tells you is to also, like, oh, you're supposed to report every tiny little thing that happens to you while you're working, like if you get a scratch or something. That's something that I wouldn't really ever do. Right. One time I was taking something out of a fridge and my elbow hit, like, this pointy part that, like, the fridge door clipped into. And I was like, I even went to my boss and I was like, hey, that looks like, it kind of hurts a little bit, but do you think that's okay? He was like, yeah, that looks fine. There's not much about it. And I kind of agreed with him on that. I was like, well, it's just like a little cut. It's not that big of a deal. It actually turned into a scar, which I still have. But it definitely depends on what you're willing to report and if you should report it.
It's up to your personal threshold.
Yeah,
and also, there's going to be different severities, obviously, but it's your personal threshold of what you think is abuse and what you think is this. And if you can handle it yourself by finding the med kit, like saying, okay, I just need a couple Band-Aids I just need like some basic medical supplies, then it's probably okay. But at least from my personal opinion, if you believe that's fine, then go ahead. If not, then take it up with your HR representative. Take it up with whatever you need to. But you should be
file that report.
you should be able to do whatever is necessary for you to make sure that you're going to be okay in this work environment. You know what I mean? And that's just something that's like we all should look at, is what your personal threshold should be, and don't let somebody else's personal threshold tell you otherwise. Like for instance, you have a pretty deep cut. And you don't, it doesn't look like it's going to be, healed anytime soon. And somebody else tells you, oh, you're fine, go back to work. Not really. Don't listen to their personal threshold of whatever you think it is. Listen to your own. and say, I can't go back to work. I need to actually go to the hospital and maybe get some stitches.
Mm-hmm.
If it's that deep, or a few other different things. But again, it's up to you. Don't let somebody else tell you otherwise, because it's your personal health, your ability to go and do this job that will determine like how you do, not how anybody else sees you. And if they fire you for that, then you can have some fun taking that up with people that deserve to no. Like a lawyer, for instance. Anyway, so yeah, that's my personal opinion about that type of thing. Anything else?
I think the only last thing that I would like to say is that there's a fine line between working for someone and being an employee and doing the dirty work.
Okay. There's a line that I will digress and I will say, just saying, listen, the line is that you are a human being, and if you do not feel like you're being treated like one, either you need to move on or fight.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, in my personal opinion, it's not worth the fight. It will probably just be like, you know what? If you feel inclined to fight it, then fight it. If you don't, then that's fine. Take your personal health in mind. Take your personal mental health in mind, and do what is necessary in order for you to make sure that you are happy within this job or whatever context of frame you're doing this. Be happy. Understand that you are a person too, and you can do spectacular things with the right ingredients in your life. Yeah. Is that it?
Yeah, this actually concludes today's bonus episode of just kind of breaks at work and just kind of like the whole everything about work. Yeah. Todd, I want to thank you so much for coming and being a guest. Once again, his podcast is Thoughts of the Modern Viking, and you can find it on Spotify or Anchor.fm. And go check him out, because he has some really good content that I enjoy listening to.
Yeah. Also, my social medias, I am on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok on Viking Elite 78. You can find me at those, and we can hit up about any topic that we bring up here, or just, if you want to come and listen to my podcast, Thoughts of the Modern Viking, as Admin G stated. I would personally like to thank Gabby for this opportunity, and maybe we can have her on my podcast sooner rather than later. But we will. I will hopefully see you there, and again, thank you very much for that.
Have a good day, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode. It releases on Sunday.
Have a good one, guys.